My name is Samantha Hoskinson, and I'm going to be doing my presentation over Mustang, Oklahoma. The current situation of Mustang, Oklahoma includes some small ponds, some small lakes, lots of forested areas, hunting land, farming land, private lakes, and just small little individual places that many of the wildlife around here can use but are not able to due to the roads around us. Mustang is a small town. On the map you can see a couple of long main roads. There are very small areas of white, which are our city streets and our small communities, and you can see those in like the light white, light beige color. That we do have one long main road, and a very certain type of person lives in Mustang. Mustang people are usually hunters, usually very outdoorsy people, which means that we do have a lot of land outside of just our small town that is out there for wildlife to be on and to thrive on. In the dark green areas, that is the forested areas and some of our waterways. You can see on the map that there's branches coming off and that it's kind of a dark green color. There are lighter green and brown areas on this map also, which are either farmland or hunting land or just areas that have not been used up yet, which allows for wildlife to be on those freely and not have to worry about being in the way of the city streets. Some possible implementations that could be made for the town of Mustang is to have some cleanliness requirements for those ponds and lakes that we do already have. Having certain people sign up to take care of those areas would be a really good way to use what we already have instead of using more of the city and town's money, having some volunteers coming in maybe, or having people who are trying to serve time get some of their hours out of the way as like a community service act. Another thing would be to have some public restrictions on who is allowed to be in those private areas or those little ponds and lakes, allowing the wildlife to come and feel more at home and not feel pressured while there are humans around. And that way, while it's not only giving them a little bit of release from pressure with humans around, but it's also lessening the pollution aspect in those areas, and there's not as much trash and those kind of things for wildlife to pick up on. Having some long-term goals for Mustang would be one thing that could be really useful. I think a wildlife bridge is one way to really use wildlife to our advantage and allow them to still be in our community but have a safe way to travel. It is, like I said, a safe way for wildlife to travel from one forested area to the next, as opposed to having to go straight across the road, which at that point then leads to less animals on the road, less animal deaths. It creates larger populations because they're not dying as fast. And then having a wildlife bridge would also allow for multiple jobs to be made for humans. People would be able to work on this. It would not be as simple overnight fix. It would be multiple jobs for people. So this is not only benefiting the wildlife, but is also benefiting us as humans as well. Some new developments or new things to think about when people are creating new developments is the first thing people should always consider is wildlife and how that's going to affect the wildlife in that area. I think a survey should be taken of wildlife before anything is built or created or construction is starting. I think that somebody in the government maybe could set a percentage for how much wildlife is in an area, and there should be a number that is not allowed to exceed a percentage, and at that point then you are not allowed to build on that site or use that site for anything other than conservation. If people do have a lower percentage of wildlife that they feel like they could relocate, relocation should be the priority over building. Relocation should be the number one top priority of any construction site or any new up-and-coming development. I do think that the amount of time should be considered and compared to how much it's going to benefit humans and wildlife and how much it's going to take away from wildlife. I think if a project is going to take multiple years and it's not going to give back to the community and not going to give back to the wildlife in the end or as a whole, then it should be reconsidered and maybe tried to